Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。President Donald Trump is proving again how much of a terrible negotiator he is, throwing his toys out of the cot after talks with Iran fell over. But there's an hilarious twist. Trump has issued a new dictatorial decree via Truth Social, saying that all countries and people who buy oil from Iran will be barred from doing business with the United States at all. And guess who buys 90% of Iranian oil? You got it, China. So on one hand, Trump's begging Beijing for a call, pleading with China to de-escalate the trade war that he began, while on the other hand, literally saying the US will stop doing business with China completely. Honestly, you can't make this stuff up. Also today, we asked Americans on the streets of Shanghai what they think of Trump's tariff tantrums. Today, we'll go beyond the propaganda. This is Reports on China. I'm Boreham here in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is pleading with China to de-escalate the ongoing trade war between the world's two largest economies, claiming it's China's responsibility to ensure things don't get worse. He told CNBC, "As I repeatedly said, I believe that it's up to China to de-escalate, because they sell 5 times more to us than we sell to them. So these 120, 145% tariffs are unsustainable." That they are, but this trade war happens to have been started by your boss. The same man who, at the same time, has issued another unachievable dictatorial decree demanding the world stop buying oil and petrochemicals from Iran, or risk being barred from doing business with the US at all. He made this post on Truth Social saying, "Any country or person who buys any amount of oil or petrochemicals from Iran will be subject to, immediately, secondary sanctions. They will not be allowed to do business with the United States of America in any way, shape, or form." But guess what? Iran's biggest customer in terms of oil is China, buying around 90% of the country's exports, around 1.8 million barrels per day. So does that mean Trump doesn't want to negotiate with China to end his tariff war now? Will he just completely end tariffs altogether in lieu of a complete and total ban on all business with China? Well, that's the next logical step, which makes his post on Truth Social absolutely and utterly ludicrous. He's already seen after his April 2 Liberation Day tariffs that China does not play games. Does he truly believe that Beijing will see his post on Truth Social and cease all oil purchases from Iran? China will not have its domestic affairs dictated to by anyone, let alone President Donald Trump, a man who's made an absolute laughingstock of himself on the world stage. Or maybe he doesn't know that China is Iran's biggest oil customer, which would make his Truth Social post even more ludicrous and 10 times as insane. But really, what else can we expect from President Donald Trump? This latest threat stems from Trump's self-initiated negotiations with Iran falling apart recently, with Iran accusing the US side of showing a lack of goodwill and seriousness in advancing the path of diplomacy. Iran's foreign minister announced on Twitter that the 4th round of talks had been postponed, before adding, "On Iran's part, there is no change in our determination to secure a negotiated solution. In fact, we are more determined than ever to achieve a just and balanced deal, guaranteeing an end to sanctions and creating confidence that Iran's nuclear program will forever remain peaceful while ensuring that Iranian rights are fully respected." But Trump, who claims to be a master negotiator, doesn't like it when the other side has its own goals and demands fair treatment. So his response to not getting his own way, as always, is to throw his toys out of the cot without pausing, reflecting, and coming up with a sound and responsible strategy. Instead, he jumps on social media and makes reckless posts that not only further ruin his talks with Iran, but threaten to end trade completely between the world's two largest economies. You guys, the next few days is going to be very interesting. And now for something a little bit different. Shanice and Oliver went out on the streets of Shanghai this week to find ordinary Americans and ask what they think about Trump's tariff war with China. Let's check it out.
This is Shanice from Shifted. We've been hearing a lot about tariffs and trade wars, but how do these policies actually feel as an American living here in China? Are they worried about price hikes? Do their opinions differ from their family members back home? Or is it all just background noise? We decided to hit the streets of Shanghai to find out.
I would just explain it in like the Chinese way, which is just like a border tax.
How would I explain tariffs to my mom?
It's a tax or like fee on imported goods from another place.
Like sales tax on steroids. That's probably the simplest way to explain it.
My mom actually believes that the tariffs are a good thing because she believes that they will bring more jobs back to the U.S.
Sometimes in the US, people don't even understand what a tariff is.
Back in America, a lot of people think that China is paying the tariff when it's really us paying extra on imported goods.
Ooh, tariffs haven't really affected my life here, I would say.
Well, they've affected my life in China in the sense that it's causing me stress and anxiety reading about what's happening back home and knowing that my family members back in the US are having to pay extra for things.
I don't believe that they have yet. I definitely think that it will probably affect me the longer I stay here or even back home, but specifically here if a trade war happens.
How many American products do I buy in China? I haven't bought any American products.
I mean, besides like fast food,
Food
Yeah.
and everything. Food, tech.
very little, I would say.
Because I am an American, there are a few things that we buy here that probably someone who was Chinese would not buy. But the amount of products that we buy here that are made in America is very small compared to in the US, the amount of products that we buy in the US that are made in China, which is the majority of products.
I just feel like the US doesn't really talk about like normal Chinese life that much.
When people are looking at the news, is it different from what I see here in China? Most definitely, because you have, ABC, NBC, all these different platforms, and it's more so on a Western type of platform. It makes sense because they're not here. But when you're in another place, it's going to be secondhand, third-hand information.
I don't watch a lot of news anymore, but the phone calls and the messages I get from my dad about things that are going on in China, I'm like, what news are you watching? I find that there's a bit of misinformation that happens.
Yeah, that's funny because sometimes I see in the news and I say, that's propaganda. The way that like in the US they say, oh, this is propaganda, Chinese propaganda. And then when I read the news here from the Western perspective, I say, that's the Western propaganda.
Responsibility? No.
Yeah, I do. I really do. Now I feel even more so that I need to almost be a defender of China because there's so much misunderstanding. People just want, good job, a place to live, personal security. No one here wants to take over the U.S. I mean, it's ridiculous. I feel like I need to inform, my fellow Americans. No, it's not really like that.
I do, because as someone who's spent a total of about 5.5 years living in China, I do think it's part of my responsibility, and not just to parrot what people want me to say in America or in China, but kind of like to find the middle road.
I think Trump likes to do this thing where he's like, I'm gonna make life worse for you, but then I'm gonna make it better by taking it back. Like with the whole TikTok ban, where he's like, it was him that started the TikTok ban, and then he's the one that removed it and was like, see how good I am, guys.
I don't know. Honestly, with that, I'm not exactly sure. Even people who are next to Trump, they don't even know. So to ask me, what is that going to look like? I have no idea.
I would hope that it's all just political and that the pendulum will swing back very soon. The fact that tariffs create just more stress on the economy. And of course, economic stresses turn into personal stresses, and personal stresses turn into personal conflict, bloodshed, all of that stuff. So I would just hate to see it go that far.
It doesn't matter, because even if he only does it short term, the die has been cast, as we say. The trust factor is lost, okay? You don't know if in another 6 months, if something else is going to happen.
I feel like we've already hurt ourselves longer term, at least for the next couple years, because of all of the investors and companies being continually off balance and not knowing how can they possibly ever invest more in our country if he's constantly changing the message.
I feel that people should be more sympathetic toward China. Just realize that China is still a developing country, but that doesn't mean that people are, living in, as JD Vance said, peasants. That is such a derogatory and horrible thing to say about Chinese people.
I guess, to people back at home, we are a smaller world than what we are realizing, and that people who are making the products, whoever that may be, even if it's back at home, they are important. Everyone is important in this whole, the whole circle.
Get off from in front of your TVs and your social media and come outside, come hang out in China.
Wow, a lot of calm and reasoned opinions there. Good to see. And on that note, that will be it for today, you guys. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does Trump realize China is Iran's biggest oil customer? And do you think China will buckle and stop buying Iranian oil? Let me know down below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.